Tonight on Young Heart TV, prepare yourself for a terrifying story that will crawl beneath your skin. In an old, forgotten house, strange whispers echo from under the floorboards every single night. Some secrets were never meant to be uncovered, and some voices should never be heard. This is Whispers Beneath the Floorboards. Before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another horror story from Young Heart TV. Turn off your lights, put on your headphones, and enjoy the nightmare. Rain poured endlessly over the small village of Graymore that night. Cold winds swept through the ancient trees surrounding the wooden houses. Ethan stood before his late grandmother's house while gripping an old suitcase tightly. It had been 10 years since he last returned to that place. The house looked much larger than he remembered from childhood. Its white paint had peeled away, and every window was covered in dust. The moment he opened the front door, the smell of rotten wood filled the air. The inside felt strangely cold, even though a small fire still burned in the fireplace. Ethan came only to sell the house as quickly as possible. He never believed the strange stories the villagers used to tell. To him, they were nothing more than bedtime tales meant to frighten children. Yet the moment he stepped inside, an uneasy feeling crept into his chest. An old clock still hung in the living room, exactly where his grandmother left it. The hands had stopped at 2:13 a.m. Ethan tried fixing it several times, but the clock always froze at the same hour. Eventually, he sighed and assumed it was broken beyond repair. The night grew darker when the electricity suddenly went out. Only flashes of lightning illuminated the house from time to time. Ethan lit a candle and sat on the sofa while reading property documents. That was when he heard a faint knocking beneath the floorboards. He lowered the papers and listened carefully. 3 slow knocks echoed from below before silence returned. Ethan crouched down and peered through the cracks in the wood, but saw nothing. He convinced himself it was probably just rats trapped under the house. A few minutes later, the sound returned. This time it was not knocking, but scratching, as though someone dragged their nails beneath the floor. The sound slowly moved closer to where Ethan sat. A chill ran down his spine. Trying to calm himself, Ethan walked into the kitchen to make coffee. But together with the scratching came faint whispers. The whispers were too soft to understand, yet they sounded like the voice of an old woman. The moment Ethan turned off the faucet, the house became completely silent. When he returned to the living room, the rocking chair was moving on its own. It swayed gently, as though someone had just risen from it. Ethan grabbed the chair, and it immediately stopped. Then a small laugh echoed from beneath the floorboards. He decided to sleep early and ignore the strange events. His grandmother's bedroom remained filled with old family photographs. In one picture, Ethan noticed a little girl he had never seen before. Her eyes looked dark and empty. At exactly 2:13 a.m., Ethan awoke to whispering beside his ear. He opened his eyes and saw a tall black figure standing in the corner of the room. It was too unnatural to be human. When lightning flashed through the window, the figure vanished instantly. Ethan's breathing quickened as heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. The steps were slow and uneven, like someone dragging their feet. His bedroom door creaked open inch by inch. From the darkness beyond came the whisper of a woman calling his name. Gathering his courage, Ethan stepped into the hallway with a flashlight in hand. The corridor was empty and swallowed in darkness. Yet the whispering continued beneath the floorboards. This time, the voices clearly said, "Help us." He followed the voices until he reached the dining room. One section of the wooden floor looked newer than the rest. Ethan tapped it lightly and heard a hollow sound underneath. His heart began pounding harder. Using an old crowbar from the storage shed, Ethan pried the boards open. Dust exploded into the air as the wood cracked apart. Beneath the floor was a narrow, hidden cellar. A terrible, rotting smell rose from the darkness below. Ethan shined his flashlight downward and discovered a staircase leading underground. Strange symbols had been carved into the cellar walls. The air there felt far colder than the rest of the house. The whispers grew louder, constantly calling his name. He slowly descended the stairs while fighting his fear. At the bottom stood an old wooden chair stained with dark marks. Broken dolls surrounded it in a wide circle. Ethan immediately sensed the room had once been used for horrifying rituals. Suddenly, the door upstairs slammed shut violently. Ethan panicked and rushed toward the staircase, but the wooden steps collapsed the moment he touched them. He was trapped underground in complete darkness. The whispers came from every direction. In one corner of the cellar, Ethan found his grandmother's diary. Its pages were filled with frantic handwriting. One sentence repeated again and again throughout the journal. Never listen to the voices beneath the floor. The more Ethan read, the more horrifying the truth became. His grandmother had once attempted to summon spirits to revive her dead daughter. The ritual failed and brought something else into the house. Since that night, whispers haunted every room. A child suddenly began crying behind him. Ethan spun around, but no one stood there. Instead, every doll in the cellar slowly turned toward him. Their lifeless eyes seemed to stare directly into his soul. His flashlight flickered weakly. Within the dim light, Ethan saw an old woman standing at the far end of the room. Her skin was pale, and her mouth stretched far too wide. She smiled while whispering softly. Ethan stumbled backward until his body struck the freezing wall. Black hands suddenly emerged through the cracks in the floorboards and grabbed at his legs. He screamed and kicked desperately at them. But more hands kept appearing. The whispers transformed into horrifying screams. Ethan clutched his head as thousands of voices spoke at once. Blood slowly dripped from his ears. He nearly lost consciousness. In his panic, Ethan spotted an old lighter near the ritual chair. He quickly set the diary and old cloths on fire. Flames spread rapidly through the underground chamber. The creature screamed louder than ever. Black smoke filled the cellar, making it impossible to breathe. Within the flames, the old woman stood completely untouched by the fire. Her eyes burned with hatred as she stared at Ethan. Then she vanished into the thick smoke. The staircase that had collapsed moments earlier suddenly appeared whole again. Ethan wasted no time and sprinted upstairs. Fire spread through the ancient house at terrifying speed. Wooden beams cracked and shattered around him. Ethan escaped outside moments before the house completely collapsed. Rain still poured heavily onto the muddy ground. He fell to his knees while staring at the burning ruins. Yet even through the flames, he could still hear whispering. The next morning, villagers gathered around the destroyed house. None of them seemed surprised by what had happened. One old man quietly said the house should have been destroyed long ago. Ethan realized the villagers had always known something terrible lived there. Before leaving Graymore, Ethan stopped at the village cemetery. There, he found the grave of a little girl named Lily Hawthorne. The year of her death matched the year his grandmother performed the ritual. The photograph on the gravestone was the same girl from the bedroom picture. As Ethan turned to leave, a freezing wind brushed against his ear. A familiar whisper followed with it. The voice quietly said, "We are still below." Ethan froze in terror. And that was Whispers Beneath the Floorboards. Sometimes the scariest things are not the monsters we see, but the voices hiding beneath us, waiting to be heard. If you enjoyed this horror story, Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more terrifying stories from Young Heart TV. Leave a comment below and tell us, would you dare stay in that house for one night? Thank you for watching. Sleep carefully tonight, because some whispers never truly disappear.